Shorter Catechism 76 to 78. Question 76. What is the ninth commandment? The ninth commandment is, Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Question 77. What is required in the ninth commandment? The ninth commandment requireth the maintaining and promoting of truth between man, and of our own and our neighbor's good name, especially in witness bearing. Question 78. What is forbidden in the ninth commandment? The ninth commandment forbiddeth whatsoever is prejudicial to truth, or injurious to our own or our neighbor's good name. Other than the 10th commandment, no other commandment brings the issues of the heart to the foreground quite like the ninth. Nowhere else do we see the heart made so manifestly clear than in situations where our mouths and our tongues speak words. James chapter 3, verse 5. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 12, verse 36, On the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. You see, every time we open our mouths, every time we speak a word, it is either for the advance of the truth and for the cause of righteousness, or it is to advance lies and the deceptions of the devil. In other words, every word counts. To be sure, the ninth commandment seems to have in view a courtroom setting. And the idea is that when called upon to bear witness, especially in judicial proceedings, we must speak all the truth all the time. And however tempted we may be in those circumstances to fudge the facts, we must never mislead the court. The court must make a sound decision on the basis of what actually happened, and they are dependent upon us, witnesses, to establish those facts. But the clear application of the ninth commandment extends well beyond the courtroom. The ninth commandment requires that we advance truth, that every word be in the cause of truth and righteousness, and that every word that we speak, every time we open our mouths, that it be in the cause of Christ, and that in every area of life. There are no exceptions. There are no corners of life in which bearing false witness is not a sin. But perhaps of greatest import is the way our words need to be for the purpose and the upbuilding, for the purpose of the upbuilding of the good name of our neighbor as well as our own good name. We know that reputation is a very significant and serious matter. Things like gossip and rumors, they spread quickly and can become in a moment slander and do great and terrible damage. This means, especially when speaking about others, we must be careful. Careful that we speak about them in the most charitable way possible. And not only must we not begin false reports about others, but we must never take part in ruining their reputation. It is essential that we do not allow ourselves to grow itching ears to receive gossip, or perhaps to receive a word of hearsay, or words that bring about scandalous accusations in the wrong way. But why do we like to hear bad reports about others? If we're honest with ourselves, we we do perk up a little bit, don't we, when somebody comes to us with a juicy word about the events or the failings or the bad circumstances of another person. Why does that happen? Why do our ears perk up? Well, for one, I would surmise when we hear a bad report about others, it makes us feel good about ourselves. It sort of pads our self-righteous egos, if we're honest. But there is a proper way in which reports about the sins of others are to be carried out. There's a proper way for sin to be spoken about in the church with regard to others. So, for instance, if you are offended by the actions of another, there is a biblical process that is very, very good, very useful. It's given by God Himself through the words of the Lord Jesus Christ. A biblical process for dealing with these alleged offenses. And it does not include going around telling others about the sins or the failings of the alleged offender. It doesn't include calling up your friend or even your pastor and telling them all about the alleged offense. Rather, it includes going to the offender privately, if the sin was a private sin, and telling that alleged offender about their offense and seeking to win your brother or sister to reconciliation in light of their sin. And so once again, we can see the heart's intentions are central here. What are the intentions that we have when we go to another person to talk to them about their sins? It is and must be not to embarrass them or shame them or get one over on them, but it must be for their good, that they might be reclaimed for Christ's glory, and that our relationship with them may be reconciled. Matthew chapter 18, Jesus tells us what it is we are to do if that attempt, that private attempt, fails. We are then to go to the alleged offender with one other witness. And then, and there, with the other witness present, we once again are seeking reconciliation. And if we fail to be reconciled at that point, then we go and we tell it to the church. Now, in Presbyterianism, we have an avenue for doing that. We do that by way of documenting the alleged offense, and we file a charge of offense with the proper court of the church. And we allow that court to receive those charges and to adjudicate the case and rule on the matter, giving the accuser every opportunity to give a defense for the alleged actions. And then an opportunity, of course, to appeal the decision of the court against them if they disagree with it. In this way, the good name of our neighbor and we ourselves, our own names, are preserved. Question 78 states that we are not only to not lie, but we are also to avoid that which is prejudicial to the truth. In other words, we ought not to be spinners of the story. It's not good enough to not lie and to speak the truth. We also need to avoid slanting things in such a way when telling the truth. To tell the truth without a spin that favors us and disadvantages others, or the truth itself, is the true cause of the ninth commandment. We ought not to tell the truth in such a way that we do it to serve our cause and to hinder the cause or hurt the cause of another. Don't we do this quite often when we're confronted with our sin? Someone tells us what we did wrong. They call us on the carpet for the actions or the words we spoke. And we start to make excuses rather than owning it. We try to cast the sin in a more understandable light to try to get us off the hook, or to mitigate our embarrassment, or to mitigate the judgment that might be rendered against us. Once again, obedience begins with the heart. We say that we love the truth, but do we really? Well, we do, perhaps, at least until the truth puts us in an awkward situation, or the truth puts us in a bad position, or the truth disadvantages us, or the truth is about our sin. And suddenly we become truth twisters rather than truth lovers. We go so far as to bend to the truth, whether it be by adding lies to the story, or more passive-aggressively by withholding certain facts from our account of the story, all with the purpose to make us look better than what we really are. And so once again, we see our failure in those circumstances to maintain the truth. And oftentimes we do so because we are not content with the truth. We wish things were otherwise. We envy certain counterfactual situations and wish that those situations were ours. And we, with our words, begin to try to construct that situation. And we try to sell it to others as well as being true. But not being content with God's providence is only the beginning. Envy is something that can, and oftentimes does, fill every moment of every day of our lives. And so in our next lesson, we'll talk about what it means to covet.